Hi everyone, my name is Marbella, and today I will be presenting my Ecology final term project. It's on the analysis on a circular business model for IKEA, which is a case study that is done by Carl, published in 2023, and I will be walking through 5 questions that answers how IKEA is transforming its business model to become more sustainable by 2030. So, starting with question one, which is a SWOT analysis of IKEA's circular transformation. So, first one is the strengths, and looking at IKEA's internal strengths. So, there are four that I identified from the article. So, first of all, IKEA has a very strong and strategic commitment, and back in 2018 they set a clear goal, which is to become fully sustainable by 2030, supported by their partnership with Ellen MacArthur Foundation as the second strength. So it's a huge commitment, so this means that the executives have a strong directions, and they also bring in expert guidance which provides the template to do it. And the third strength, which is that they launch diverse circular services, including circular hubs, which is the one in the picture there. It's basically like a retail store but for secondhand furniture. They also have buyback programs, spare part services, and also repair initiatives for their consumers. Basically, they have sustainability initiatives across all product life cycles. And the last one, which is they created circularity improvement roadmaps for 9,500 of their products, which is very thorough and specific product wise, which means there are a lot of phases in the product designs to distribution and to the product end of life, to where that they can um, improve circularity of the product. So now we're still on the first questions, but on the second category, which is internal weaknesses. So the first weaknesses, which is identified on paragraph 7, is resistance from long-term employees, which are like middle managers or senior managers, basically those who are already in the company long enough to have a stake. Like, for example, obviously they have a certain mindset, they have certain practices, and they don't want to become obsolete when the company is changing direction. So they can slow down the transformation if those resistance are not mitigated. And the second one, which is the difficulty of scaling some local projects that have made impacts globally while still keeping a low CO2 emissions, as we all pretty much know that to scale initiatives, like for example just for the circular hub program that I mentioned before, it would require some logistic and some distribution, and this require transportation that do generate CO2 emission, which means that scaling the program would have made a contribution to CO2 emission, which is exactly the opposite of what the sustainability program is all about. And the third one is the varying readiness in the market. So IKEA operates in all kinds of countries, not just developed one, but also developing markets like Indonesia and India. And basically, we are not ready to, as much as developed country, to become this all sustainable market. Like developing countries usually care more about the price than the eco consciousness of such a brand. And lastly, it's very much dependent on the third party vendors and logistics and distributors, suppliers, like very much depend on external parties instead of just internal capabilities. Okay, so the third of the SWOT is opportunities. Basically, IKEA has many existing opportunities in terms of why it should make its business circular and more sustainable. So basically, consumer awareness of sustainability has significantly improved, especially among Gen Z and millennials. It is clear that that is the new trend, and more people are actively choosing eco-conscious brands, which directly works in IKEA's favor. And the second one, which is there is also the trend of product as a service model. So basically, it's instead of just selling furniture, IKEA could even lease it or rent it back. That shows like how much the trend is changing. So the second one, or the second opportunity, it is corporate sustainability is definitely becoming more of a trend. Like you can see in the picture, there are people accepting recognitions for it. Even in Indonesia, like it's still a developing market. And the third one is new regulation that is being pushed by most government in the world, which obviously pushes vendors and suppliers to work in the directions that of IKEA's sustainability standards. So IKEA has more leverage. And the last one, which is there are a lot of NGOs and academia that are offering their help in terms of making community engage, and also offering innovation in how making businesses more circular. Like there's a lot of help, and IKEA also has the Ellen MacArthur Foundation support of their expert guidance to tap into and bring the knowledge into the company. So the last of the SWOT, which is the question one, is the threats. So the first clear real threat here are profitability concern. I mean, IKEA is a business, so the lack of profitability. Research that has been done on like is sustainability product really that profitable, and certainly they are more costly since you have to consider eco consciousness in every life cycle, and then in every stage of those life cycle. So yeah, that's the profitability needs to be balanced with the sustainability of every product. And then the second one is eco-conscious behavior is not inherent in every market that IKEA operates in. For example, like a developing country, typically they prefer more convenience and they prefer more value for money uh, rather than eco consciousness, especially for value for money, since obviously, even in Indonesia, IKEA is still viewed as a middle to high level brand. So not everyone can afford that. And if they like push up the price to make it more sustainable, that means like it's a more little market size that can afford it. And the third one, which is the lack of eco conscious partners. So IKEA obviously depends on a lot of third party vendors. In developing country, this is harder to find because like the regulation that has been pushed is not like obeyed by everyone. It's not enforced. Many of it is not even mandatory. So it's hard in developing countries to find suppliers and logistic partners who operate by the same standard. And the lastly, which is the circular pilots, like secondhand stores, uh, they do not have like regulations, and regulatory differences across country in general do create barriers. So what is legally allowed might be restricted somewhere else, making global scaling of eco-friendly products and services difficult for IKEA. Okay, so the second part of the first question, which is determining the source of ISO regulations that fits most for IKEA's sustainability goal and transformation. So the first most relevant standard for ISO is ISO 14001 on environmental management system standard. This is most directly relevant because it obviously gives the base framework that gives IKEA the framework to manage environmental responsibility throughout its business operations. So, from deciding new SOPs and what metrics to track, and then how to improve those metrics to make them more sustainable, and then gives them like a timeline and also deadlines, obviously, and then how to scale them throughout its operations. And the second ISO is ISO 14044, which covers life cycle assessment. So it offers standards to conduct product environmental impacts from its raw material to its end of life. So obviously, IKEA already considers the environmental impacts of all its 9,500 products for circularity. And this standard is the base why it does that. And then how are those impacts measured against the international standards. And then the last ISO is ISO 20400 on sustainable procurement, which guides how like sustainable raw materials are supposed to be procured in a way that doesn't irreparably harm the environment. So since IKEA's transformations depends heavily on suppliers and their manufacturers, uh, to this standard gives like the base for material innovation moving forward, and it supports IKEA's goal in having a product design that is sustainable and eco-friendly. And first of all, it starts with sustainable sourcing. So moving on to the second questions, which is explaining the four phases or CBMI or circular business model innovation and how it relates to IKEA. So the first phase in here is visioning, which is where a company defines its long-term circular direction. For IKEA, this happens in 2018, where they declare their commitment to be fully circular by 2030, uh, with Ellen MacArthur Foundation as a partner. And the second phase is sensing, which is where they scan their environment, like their business environment, to identify circular opportunities and gaps. Obviously, IKEA demonstrated this when they assessed their entire products range to detect where circular improvements are needed. And the third phase is seizing, which is basically acting on those opportunities that are already identified. IKEA does this by launching many sustainability services such as the circular hubs and then buybacks programs, and then they also redesign their products with 8 circular capabilities, including repairability, modularity, and using recyclable materials. And then the fourth last phase is transforming, which is basically determines if a project will make it or not. This one is the most complex one. Circular principle have to be embedded throughout the organizations, from top to bottom, from left to right, which means if the company is as big as IKEA, this means like not just in Sweden or in the US, or not only in developed country but also in developing countries. Obviously, this is still a very much ongoing process, because it's not just a one-time change, but it's an ongoing shift that not only for business practices, but also changing like mindset of everybody that works there to be prioritizing sustainability as one of its strategic pillars, like integrating it into its operations. So the third question is outlining key actors in IKEA's transformation phase, which is the fourth phase of the CBMI that is discussed before. So there are 9 key actors identified here, and we can group them into like I guess 4 categories. So the first one, it is the executive level. So IKEA's leaders that drives the entire transformation. They set the goals, and without top management buy-in, obviously there are no funding. There are also no people like assigning responsibility, accountability, and the executive level is also supported by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which gives their global expertise, global credibility on circularity and sustainability, and also probably invites investors that are eco-conscious and brands to work with them. And then at the employee level, there are store employees that generate bottom-up innovation day to day. It highlights how ground level creativity exists in the article. And then there's also senior managers, which are can be a source of resistance, but can also be a power boost if they are already buy in, then they can motivate others like their employees, their staff, to also prioritize sustainability. And then there's also non-store employees, which are those who work in the back room, like for example in the warehouses, in the offices. They support day-to-day operations and make the sustainability initiatives happen, even though they are not client-facing like the store employees. And then on the customer side, obviously customers are the critical actors. Without them, there are no demands, and services like the buyback programs and the circular hubs only work if people actually participate. And IKEA has to design incentives to make this happen. And one of those happens through the NGOs and academic institutions, which are obviously uh, related to the community. So they can uh, invite participations from the consumers, and they can also provide like a community level knowledge, and also like R&D innovation that IKEA can implement in its business strategy to make products more accessible while still being sustainable, or like still high quality. And then lastly, like suppliers, which are basically they can include third party vendors, manufacturers, uh, or even logistic partners that physically have to redesign products, redesign their own like uh, operating system, their own transportation method to meet circular standards that align with IKEA sustainability goals. Usually, they are bought into this process because they also have like their own goals to pursue, and there are like government intervention, which makes us come to the last actor in the screen, which is the government. So basically, the government are the one who make this whole system-wide change possible. Without government regulations, it's very hard to imagine that people would just buy in, especially for the supplier side. So the government do create tax breaks and creates funding support for eco-conscious brands. They create a lot of awards and support uh, sustainability innovation in the field. So they basically make system-wide transformation for the industry possible and create the environment itself. Okay, so now the fourth question, which is the challenges in scaling circular initiative globally. The first one is the logistic emissions that occur due to bringing services operations, scaling them like globally. So obviously, when you need to bring one services, circular services overseas, you would need like transportation, logistic, and product consumptions in making like circular hubs happen, like building them from scratch. And CO2 emission is not something that IKEA wants to create. It's the opposite of this goal, which means that to conduct the sustainability goal, they basically have to create CO2 emission. So it's not really like a side effect that it is unwanted. And the second one, it is basically it's more expensive to run sustainability services, and the profitability of them is still not determined. So before IKEA can justify global expansion, they need to prove that these models are actually engaging with the consumers and they can still make a healthy profit on top of it. Neither of which is guaranteed in these markets. And then the third one is local ecosystem dependency. So as it is seen in the Christmas tree project, even one successful project can fail when it is put in the environment when there are no local infrastructure to support it and when the community is not engaging with it. Therefore, as a global brand, IKEA cannot just copy paste its one successful project and assume it will work somewhere. It has to adapt to the local market where each of its store exists. And the last one is cultural resistance from the employees itself, long-standing employees who are already invested in one way of working, one way of strategizing, now has to incorporate sustainability as an added strategic pillar. It will be hard for them, especially for senior managers who now has to like I guess motivate and force their staffs and employees to buy in this uh, eco-conscious branding and has to interact with customers firsthand. So cultivating their buy-in might be the hardest challenge because like the others are about money and like about logistic innovation, which can still be I guess it can still be mitigated with innovation and funding, but cultural resistance is a bit harder, but it is worth it if IKEA can get their employees, their own employees, to support this movement. So the last question is on proofs of collaborations and ecosystem dependency in past transformation efforts. So the first the first proof is the Ellen MacArthur Global Foundation as the partner who give the blueprint, give the template, give the global credibility and everything. Uh, it's since 2018. And what makes IKEA's executive are so confident about their 2030 circularity goal, which is because they have this credible partner. And the second one is the supplier of sustainable materials. Obviously, IKEA, in designing and distributing products, it needs suppliers like to give them either raw material or half finished goods for them to sell directly or to improve into another product, make into another product. And these suppliers need to operate with the materials that are responsibly sourced and use minimum plastic. They need to be recyclable, repairability, modularity, and obey all the circularity standards that IKEA has. And the third one is the government bodies, which are directly correlated because with the suppliers, because government usually create and enforce the regulations that make system-wide changes possible. They make sure that suppliers have certain standard of what percentage of their products can be plastic, cannot be plastic, needs to be recyclable, and this will enforce changes not just for IKEA but for all of its vendors. so it will become leverage. And the local community obviously are people who live and buy IKEA products in each store. They are also engaging with circular initiatives like the buyback program, the rewards program, and the repair initiatives. Um, so even like collaborating with them and their representatives in forms of the NGOs and academic institutions that provide knowledge about the community, how to engage with them, and also about how to implement new innovations that will make products still high quality and still usable, still looks good, and still affordable for the community. Our past collaborations that IKEA have done, as proven by successful pilot projects like the Christmas tree that we have discussed before. So to summarize that, IKEA's business transformation is a powerful example of how a business can use its internal strengths and leverage opportunities and mitigates both weaknesses and threats, and also collaborate with others, leverage the rules that are already out there, and work with vendors, communities, and even academia uh, that to truly transform its operations. And obviously it requires more than just intentions and targets, but actual implementation, which is still ongoing for IKEA. So it demands not just the commitment but also the right ecosystem of partners in every store, cultural change too for the employees and for the community. So hopefully that can happen for IKEA. So thank you for watching my presentations, and I hope that this analysis gives a clear picture on what a circular model operation looks like for a global brand like IKEA. So the references for where in the article for each slide are in the slides, and the references for the resources themselves are in the thank you slide. Thank you.